All right, let's dive into this. Sun Tzu's The Art of War. You sent over some audio from the first 13 chapters.
Yeah.
And we're so ready to unpack it all. This ancient text, I mean, it's like full of these insights on strategy and planning. And, what we really want to do is figure out what makes it so relevant even today.
It's amazing how the art of war goes way beyond just warfare. You think about it.
Right.
Like for centuries, leaders, from like all these different areas have used it for guidance.
Oh, yeah.
Whether they're like in business or politics or even just, like personal growth.
So our mission today is to uncover what makes this work so powerful and figure out what you, listening to this, can actually take away from it. And trust me, some of these ideas, they might really surprise you.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Sun Tzu, he's not always going to say what you think he's going to say.
Right.
Like right from the beginning in chapter 1.
Yeah.
He sets this pretty intense tone.
He does not mince words, that's for sure.
No, he doesn't.
He says, the art of war is of vital importance to the state. It is a matter of life and death.
Right.
A road either to safety or to ruin.
Wow.
Hence, it is a subject of inquiry which cannot, on no account, be neglected.
Heavy stuff.
It's heavy. Now, he's talking about the state here.
Oh, right.
But how can we, apply this to our own lives?
Yeah, that's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
I mean, think about it. You have a big goal. Maybe it's like a promotion at work.
Sure.
Or you want to start your own business.
Yeah.
Or even, just navigate a tough conversation you need to have with someone.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Sun Tzu's point is, if you go in unprepared, that's basically a recipe for disaster.
So it's more about being proactive, thinking ahead, planning ahead, instead of just reacting to what comes up.
Exactly. It's like failing to plan is planning to fail.
Right.
Sun Tzu wants you to be thinking ahead, several steps ahead.
Yeah.
Anticipating challenges and strategizing your moves.
Okay.
Whatever battle you're facing.
I like that. And then he goes on to outline what he calls the 5 constant factors.
Yeah.
These are the elements that you need to think about in any situation. Moral law, heaven, earth, the commander, and method and discipline.
Okay.
This sounds pretty complex, though.
It does sound a little intimidating, I know.
Yeah.
But these concepts, they're actually super relevant to everyday life.
Okay, break it down for us.
Right. So let's start with moral law.
Right.
Think of it as having a strong sense of purpose.
Okay.
And making sure your actions match your values. This creates a sense of unity and commitment.
Okay.
Whether you're leading a team at work or you're working on something personal.
So it's like having that internal compass guiding you.
Yeah, exactly.
What about heaven, though? That sounds kind of, abstract.
Heaven, it refers to all the things you can't control, basically.
Okay.
Like time or the weather, or even like a sudden market crash if you're in business, right?
Yeah.
Sun Tzu's point is that you have to understand these uncontrollable forces.
Right.
So you can adapt and even use them to your advantage.
So being flexible, you're saying, rolling with the punches.
Exactly.
Okay, so what about earth?
Earth. Think of that as your terrain.
Okay.
So like your industry, your skills, your personal network.
Yeah.
It's about knowing your ground, knowing your strengths, knowing your weaknesses, and knowing where you stand in relation to other people. The more you understand that terrain, the better your advantage is going to be.
So it sounds like he's emphasizing self-awareness.
Yes.
And being aware of the landscape that you're in.
Yeah.
Okay, what about the commander?
Good commander.
That seems pretty straightforward leadership.
Right. But Sun Tzu goes beyond just giving orders.
Okay.
He talks about qualities like wisdom, sincerity, and courage. A true commander, they inspire their people.
Yeah.
They earn their trust.
Yeah.
And they motivate them to work towards a common goal.
So it's not just about being bossy.
No.
It's about bringing people together.
Exactly.
And then lastly, method and discipline.
Yeah.
What does that entail?
That's all about execution.
Okay.
The actual, nitty-gritty of how things get done. Do you have a clear plan?
Right.
Are your resources organized? Are you efficient?
So attention to detail, discipline, that kind of thing.
Sun Tzu knew even the most brilliant strategy is worthless if you don't execute it well.
That makes total sense. Now, this is where it gets really interesting to me, I think. In chapter 3, Sun Tzu says, thus the highest form of generalship is to balk the enemy's plans. The next best is to prevent the junction of the enemy's forces. The next in order is to attack the enemy's army in the field. And the worst policy of all is to besiege walled cities. This is the art of war, and yet he seems to be saying, like, avoiding war is the best strategy.
It's kind of surprising.
Right.
It is surprising.
He understood that real victory.
Yeah.
It's about achieving your goals, but with as little conflict as possible.
So winning before the battle even starts.
Yes. Think of it like that.
Yeah.
Winning before the battle begins.
Interesting.
That's the principle of victory without fighting, and it's really powerful.
Powerful, yeah.
You can apply it in negotiations, you can apply it in relationships.
Okay.
Really any situation where there's a struggle.
Can you give us some concrete examples?
Sure. Imagine you're in a business negotiation, right?
Okay.
Instead of going in with this like confrontational attitude,
right?
What if you focus on finding common ground? Like creating a win-win for everyone.
I see, yeah.
Or let's say there's a personal conflict.
Okay.
Instead of it like arguing and escalating things.
Right.
What if you try to actually understand their perspective?
Yeah.
And find a compromise? That's good. So you're basically looking for these creative solutions and seeing if you can just kind of sidestep a direct confrontation.
Exactly. And, that challenges like the traditional view of winning.
Right.
Where you have to like defeat your opponent.
Yeah, totally.
And that brings us to another fascinating part of how Sun Tzu thinks.
Okay.
Deception and psychology.
Okay.
He's not afraid to use them, like at all.
Really? Deception?
He says it plainly in chapter 1. All warfare is based on deception.
Isn't that a little, unethical?
No, he's not saying to be dishonest.
Okay.
It's more about, like, you understand the power of perception.
Right.
And you use it strategically.
Okay.
He talks about things like holding out baits to entice the enemy or feigning disorder to throw your opponent off.
So it's about strategy and psychology to gain an advantage.
Yes.
Okay.
Think about it like in the context of persuasion.
Okay.
Or even marketing, right?
Yeah.
You're not necessarily lying, but you're presenting things in a way that influences people.
Right, okay.
And their decisions.
So you're being savvy, I guess, and you're understanding how people's minds work?
Exactly.
And that kind of ties into what he says about knowing yourself and your enemy?
Yes. One of his most famous quotes from chapter 3. If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles.
Powerful stuff.
Yeah, but how many of us actually take the time to really look at our own strengths and weaknesses?
Yeah.
Or to truly try to understand the people we're dealing with?
It's so easy to forget to do that. Yeah.
Right.
So what are some practical ways we can apply that? Like knowing ourselves and our enemy?
It starts with self-reflection.
Okay.
You got to ask yourself, what are my strengths? What are my weaknesses?
Okay.
What motivates me?
Right.
What makes me feel insecure?
I see.
And then when it comes to understanding your enemy, which could be a competitor, a difficult coworker, or just an obstacle in your life, you have to ask, what are their goals? What are they afraid of? What are their pressures?
So putting on your detective hat, basically, and just gathering as much info as you can.
Yes.
It makes me think about market research, data analysis, even just good listening skills.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
The more you know about yourself and the situation, the better decisions you're going to make.
This is great. And we're just getting started. We'll be back in a bit to dive even deeper into Sun Tzu's wisdom.
All right.
Welcome back. We've been exploring some of those key ideas from the art of war.
Yeah.
Like, being prepared, being self-aware, and even using psychology, in a smart way. But I want to know, how does Sun Tzu suggest we use this knowledge to our advantage?
Okay, so once we understand ourselves and our quote-unquote opponent, what's next? What do we do?
Yeah, what's the move?
Well, Sun Tzu's a big believer in, exploiting weaknesses.
Okay.
He says, attack him where he is unprepared. Appear where you are not expected.
Yeah.
So you got to find those gaps, those vulnerabilities in your opponent's defenses. And then you capitalize on them.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But it also sounds kind of ruthless.
Right.
How do we balance this idea of exploiting weaknesses with, still being ethical and fair?
I think it comes down to intention.
Okay.
Sun Tzu's not saying you should go out there and just take advantage of people or be malicious.
Gotcha.
It's more about understanding that, everyone has vulnerabilities, right? And if you're in a strategic situation, you have to be aware of those vulnerabilities, both your own and your opponent's.
So you're saying it's not about being cutthroat, it's more about being, I guess, strategic?
Yeah.
And discerning.
Exactly. So think about it like this. Okay. Let's say you're doing a business deal, right? You don't want to exploit your competitor.
Right.
In a way that's going to harm them.
Yeah.
But you do need to understand their limitations, right?
Okay.
And use that knowledge to your advantage.
So it's like finding those niches that your competitor hasn't found yet.
Yes. Or maybe identifying areas where you have a clear advantage over them.
Yeah.
Or in a negotiation, let's say.
Yeah.
It's knowing what their priorities are.
Right.
And where they might be willing to, give a little.
This all makes sense, but it seems like it requires a certain level of, detachment.
Oh, yeah.
To be able to really look at the situation objectively and not let your emotions get in the way.
You have to be able to keep a clear head.
Yeah.
Sun Tzu, he emphasizes that a lot.
Okay.
Remaining calm and rational, even when things are getting intense.
So he wouldn't be a fan of just making a rash decision.
No, definitely not.
Based on, ego or fear.
Not at all.
Yeah.
He wants you to be calculated, to weigh the risks, weigh the benefits before you make a move.
So it's a very calculated approach.
Very much so.
He also cautions against, getting stuck on one particular tactic.
Yes. He says, do not repeat the tactics which have gained you one victory, but let your methods be regulated by the infinite variety of circumstances.
That's where his famous water analogy comes in, right? Where he says, military tactics are like unto water. For water in its natural course runs away from high places and hastens downwards.
Yeah.
So in war, the way is to avoid what is strong and to strike at what is weak.
It's such a great image.
It is.
Because it shows us that strength and weakness, they're relative.
Right.
What's a strength in one situation could be a weakness in another. A good strategist, they know how to read the situation, see those vulnerabilities, and adapt.
Yeah, be adaptable.
Be like water, my friend.
Right. Flow around the obstacles.
Exactly. And that idea of adapting, it's so crucial.
Yeah.
Especially in the world today.
Right.
Think about how fast things change in business.
Oh, yeah.
Technology is constantly evolving.
We're changing.
If you're not flexible, you're going to get left behind.
So it's about embracing change, being willing to pivot when you need to.
Yeah.
Now, beyond just adapting to the external world, right? Sun Tzu, he also talks about discipline and the psychological side of, warfare.
Yeah. He says in chapter 7, a whole army may be robbed of its spirit. A commander-in-chief may be robbed of his presence of mind.
Wow. So he understood that battles, they can be won or lost in the minds of the people fighting.
He was way ahead of his time when it came to that psychological warfare.
Right. Keeping up morale, controlling your own emotions, and even messing with your opponent's head a little bit.
Sowing seeds of doubt. Yeah. I'm all part of the game.
So it's mental resilience, especially when things are, really intense.
Yeah. If you can stay calm and focused when everyone else is freaking out.
Right.
That's a huge advantage.
It is.
And that's something you can actually train yourself to do.
Okay.
Sun Tzu talks about that. Discipline, self-control, not letting your emotions run wild.
So he would not be a fan of being reactive or impulsive.
Not at all.
Yeah.
He wants you to be mindful, deliberate, in control of your mental game.
So both in your actions and your thoughts.
Exactly.
Now, we've talked a lot about strategy and tactics and all that.
Yeah.
But what about leadership?
Okay.
What does he have to say about being a good leader?
He talks about it a lot.
Okay.
He puts a lot of emphasis on it. There's that famous line in chapter 10.
Yeah.
He says, regard your soldiers as your children, and they will follow you into the deepest valleys.
Okay.
Look upon them as your own beloved sons, and they will stand by you even unto death.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
But also a little idealistic, don't you think?
Well, he's not talking about literally, your kids.
Right.
It's about building trust and respect within your team.
Okay.
It's about understanding what they need, motivating them, and inspiring them to work together.
So it's more than just giving orders.
Yeah, you got to connect with people on a human level.
Right.
But Sun Tzu also knew that being a good leader doesn't mean you got to be everyone's best friend.
Right.
He talks about enforcing discipline.
Okay.
Holding people accountable, keeping things in order.
So it's that balance between, I guess, compassion and firmness.
Yes.
Inspiring your team, but also setting clear expectations.
Exactly.
And he also says, It is the business of a general to be quiet and thus ensure secrecy, upright and just, and thus maintain order. So, leading by example.
Right. Walking the talk.
Walking the talk, yeah.
Living by the principles you're preaching.
Integrity.
Yes.
That's so important for building trust.
Absolutely.
Now, before we wrap up, I have one last passage from Sun Tzu that I found super intriguing.
Right.
In chapter 11, he says, "The skillful tactician may be likened to the shuizhan." Now, the shuizhan is a snake that is found in the Chung Mountains. Strike at its head, and you will be attacked by its tail. Strike at its tail, and you will be attacked by its head. Strike at its middle, and you will be attacked by head and tail both. What do you make of that?
That's Sun Tzu being, like, super cryptic.
It is.
But I think what he's getting at is that, things are connected. A problem might look simple on the surface.
Right.
But if you don't deal with the root cause, it's just going to pop up somewhere else.
So think holistically, basically.
Yeah. See the big picture.
Yeah.
Anticipate those unintended consequences.
Be ready for, the ripple effect.
Exactly.
Yeah, I know.
And it also highlights the need for flexibility.
Okay.
Like that snake, you got to be ready to respond to anything from any direction. Adjust your strategy as you go.
Yeah.
Always be thinking one step ahead.
Be prepared for the unexpected. Yeah. All right. I think that's a great place to stop for now.
Yeah.
We've covered so much exploring the art of war and how it relates to, modern life.
And how we can use it today.
Exactly. And I'm already starting to see how I can apply some of this to my own life.
Me too.
It's really making me think.
That's the beauty of it, I think.
Yeah.
It makes you think differently. It challenges your assumptions.
Right.
And it helps you approach problems in a more strategic way.
It's not about being a warrior. It's about being strategic.
Exactly.
In all aspects of your life.
And that's why it's been relevant for all these centuries.
Right. And across all these different cultures.
Yeah, it gets at something really fundamental.
It does.
About human nature and strategy.
Think about it.
Yeah.
Sun Tzu was writing about war. But his ideas, they go way beyond that.
They really do.
He's giving us a timeless guide to understanding people. Thinking strategically and achieving success.
And that's valuable for everyone.
It is. It is. So as we wrap up our deep dive, I want to leave you with this challenge.
Okay.
Take some time to, reflect on what we talked about. Pick one or two of these principles that really resonated with you and see how you can use them in your own life.
Exactly. Maybe it's being more prepared for a tough conversation. Or maybe it's setting some goals and figuring out a strategy to achieve those goals.
Or just being more aware of your strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah, that's the big one.
It is.
The important thing is to just try things out.
Right. Experiment.
Yeah, experiment and see what works for you.
Okay.
And, keep learning and growing.
Keep learning.
Yeah.
You might surprise yourself.
You never know.
That's it for our deep dive into the art of war.
It's been fun.
It has been fun. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep strategizing. All right, so we're back, and we've really gotten deep into the art of war.
We have lots to think about.
Yeah, preparing for challenges, right? Using psychology to your advantage, exploiting weaknesses.
All those good things.
All that good stuff, yeah. It's amazing how these ideas from centuries ago still apply to today.
Yeah, it's incredible how timeless they are.
It is, but, it's not enough to just hear about these principles.
Right.
The real challenge is figuring out how to use them.
Yeah, in your actual life.
Yeah, exactly.
That's where the real work begins.
It does.
You got to take these concepts and make them actionable.
Okay.
Find ways to use them when you're making decisions,
Right.
every day.
So what about you listening right now? What really stood out to you? What resonated?
What made you think I need to learn more about that?
What sparked your curiosity? Yeah, think about the challenges that you're facing right now. At work, in your relationships, maybe even just with yourself.
Yeah, those inner battles too.
Those inner battles, exactly. Where could you maybe apply some of these ideas from Sun Tzu?
It's not about becoming some kind of warrior,
Right.
It's about using these ideas to make your life better.
Yeah.
To achieve what you want.
Achieve your goals, yeah. And, one of the things I've learned from the art of war is that it's not just a set of rules.
Oh, absolutely not. It's not like a recipe book, you know?
Yeah.
You can't just follow it step by step.
It's more like a framework.
Yeah, like a way of thinking.
Yeah.
That you can adapt to whatever you're facing.
That's why it's connected with so many people for so long.
Yeah, all over the world, right?
All over the world, in every industry.
Different cultures, different times.
Just because it gets at something really deep.
It's about human nature.
Right. And how we strategize.
Yeah. How we approach problems.
It is. I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
Sun Tzu was writing about war.
Right.
But his ideas, they're bigger than that.
They really are.
He's giving us a way to understand people and how to think strategically to get what we want.
And that's valuable no matter who you are.
It really is. So, as we wrap up our deep dive into the art of war, I want you to, take some time to think about all this. Pick one or two things that really connected with you.
Yeah, those light bulb moments,
Yeah, and just see if you can use those ideas in your life.
Experiment a little, see what happens.
Right. Maybe it's about being more prepared for a tough conversation or setting goals and figuring out a good strategy.
Yeah, or being more self-aware.
Being self-aware, yeah.
That's a big one.
The point is to just try things out.
Yeah. Don't be afraid to experiment.
And see what happens.
See what works.
Keep learning, keep growing.
That's it.
That's it for our deep dive into the art of war.
It's been a pleasure.
It's been great. Say that.
We'll see you next time.
Until then.